also, surprisingly, I've had adults buy this book that do not have children, especially elderly people. And it's been nice to hear the feedback from them. I say children's book author, but I've had all walks of life get this book and just say, thank you. Thank you, because a lot of the questions, especially the questions in the back, I make sure that you do something like, what are you doing to memorialize your pet? Or what are, some things that you're thinking about doing? Because that's important as part of the grief journey too. You can't just like one and done, leave it alone, and then just expect to totally heal overnight. It's a journey for everybody that's been through it. And, doing these little things can help you with it, just like with people.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Chita Heals podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez. Our guest today is the end of life pet doula. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Yes.
And she's here with us to talk about healing and grieving after losing a pet, but also to talk about her book. Please welcome to the podcast, Kristen Griffen. Kristen, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me.
To get started, can you share with us where you're coming from?
Yes, I'm coming from the Gulf Coast of Mississippi.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the podcast. I see that you have a book. Can you share with us the title of your book?
Yes, it's called Magnum's Final Goodbye, and it's a book written about my soul dog, Magnum, that passed away from cancer.
Oh, so can you share with us a little bit about your dog, Magnum?
Yeah. So Magnum was my black lab that I hand raised. I came from vet med. I was working at an animal hospital. I came to work one day and there was a box of puppies at the front door that someone had dropped off in the middle of the night. There were about eight of them. Their ears were still closed, their eyes were still closed, so they were, around 2 weeks old, very young. So each technician there decided that they were going to take two with them and hand raise them, and that's where our relationship started.
Well, so for how many years did your family have Magnum as a family member?
He was 13 years old, so we were able to have him for 13 years, which is very good for me, in my eyes, very good for a larger dog, for a lab.
Okay, and when was it that you started seeing that his health was declining?
So I decided to leave vet med, and within the month of leaving the practice that I was at, I started to see a decline in his health, but I just chalked it up to old dog syndrome, right? Oh, my dog's getting older. He starts slowing down, becoming arthritic. Some things are going on. And I knew better because I've had a history of, 14 years I had invested into, working at this animal hospital, and also have a degree behind me. So I kind of knew better than this in the back of my mind, but I didn't want to accept it, right? Well, I started to notice that his stomach was just bulging more and more on one side, and I knew it was a tumor. So I decided to bring him to that hospital that I worked at the time, or I just recently left, which we still had a great relationship. We did an x-ray and ultrasound on him, and it showed a huge tumor in his abdomen. So I went to the oncologist just to confirm everything, to make sure that it was something that wasn't operable, because it was just taking over his abdomen, pushing up into his chest. It was not operable, and they gave us about a month left to live with him. But we got him for 4 extra months past his time. Yeah.
When you heard the news, what was your reaction?
I was very calm. I feel like, having been in the vet field, it was something that was familiar, right? But it's different when it's your own pet. In the sense, when I say it's different, it's not that you're not showing compassion towards other pets that you have been through with bad news or have walked with the euthanasia process through, it just kind of turns into, you know, this is it. You know, I knew this day was going to come. I've seen this so many times, but we're finally here. And it was sad. It was a little bit of guilt because I didn't go in sooner. You know, you start going through that process of, you know, now I'm on the other side of the medical table. I'm the client and I have the patient versus being on the medical staff. So you start going through the whole motions of, I should have brought him to the vet sooner. I should have just paid a little bit more attention. And that whole, you know, if you've ever been a pet owner, these things go through your mind and you start, you know, going through the emotions of grief, right? You start to get on that roller coaster. And that's kind of where I was. But in a sense, I was at peace because he was an older dog and it wasn't a traumatic thing that happened like an accident to where I wasn't ready to say goodbye. So we were able to really prep ourselves. I like to call myself a newer mom. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so we were able to kind of incorporate, you know, our children, spending those last few days with him as a family, and we're able to work our way up to saying goodbye to him.
And when it was time to say goodbye, I know you said that you were at peace, but how about others, like in the family or people
Yeah.
who knew Magnum? How were they going through that?
So my husband, he was still trying to, you know, wrap around it. He works offshore for half of the month. So he actually wasn't here whenever we got the bad news. So he had to come home to the bad news, which for him, we were on emotional wavelengths for that because he didn't really get to digest it because he was at work. So he knew on the drive home, you know, this is what I'm coming home to. So he was just now seeing him in person. The grief journey was a little bit delayed, if you will, because I had already started on it because I'd gotten the bad news a couple weeks prior. Our children, my daughter, she was a little too young, but you know, I'm jumping ahead of myself. When the time came to say goodbye and he wasn't here, she understood that the routine was off a little bit. My son, you know, we did our last morning with him and we had our last breakfast with him, and he was able to say goodbye to him before we went to the beach to go and put him down with our vet staff. So it was a prep going into it. It was a lot of talking. It was 2 wavelengths of talking. It was adults talking together and then also adults talking to children too, which can be a little tough sometimes. And like I said, I like to call myself a newer mom. I had never done this before as a mother. I was so used to talking to families, you know, from the tech side. You know, I was a vet tech for a very long time. I was on the management side for a very long time. And this was new territory for me. So I was learning as I went, if you would say.
So you went to the beach, you had your final goodbye. Now the grief journey, what does that look like? Are there like grief steps or grief degrees? Can you walk us through that?
Yes. So I feel like that I'm able to talk about this on 2 sides. Watching, being a person from the vet staff, watching people go through their grief, and then also now being the client and having the patient going through the grief. And some people, you know, they have a bigger bond with their animals than what they do their own people in their life. When their pet passes away, they grieve their pet way more than what a family member they would have grieved. The bond is just different. You know, pets, they give us so much unconditional love. You know, they give us exercise and movement. They give us, you know, just company. They want to be around us, you know, whenever others may not want to be around us. They hold our secrets. And for me, I'd had Magnum before I was married and had children. So he was really there for me before I had really began this life that I had. So I had my own grief journey in that sense. And, but now I have to walk my children through it. And now my husband, who had, we called him Magnum's dad, he was Magnum's dad. So, now I'm having to help myself, help my children, and also help my husband. And then my family, who stood behind me and had their own relationships with him. So the grief journey for a pet is a very beautiful thing. It's a very special thing. And it's just like with people, it could be all over. It's a roller coaster. I have seen where people grieve so hard that they have to, seek medical interventions where, that now they're on medication because of it, because that was, some of them, that was their only companion, that was their only friend, and now they're gone. Some people grieve by turning around and getting another pet very quickly. That's just that it looks different in all angles of life. And it just really depends on your home life too, and the type of person that you are. But for me, my grief, just like with a person, some days it'll hit me and I'll be really sad and I'll cry still, or some days I'll smile and I'll laugh. We have, like I said in the beginning, we have a farm, just conversation. So obviously we have a lot of pets. We do have more dogs, and I'll catch myself saying to one dog in particular here, Magnum would never do this shit. Like, he would have never done this. And then I just, you uphold that pet that was your soul pet to a higher standard, and you always will. And then you catch yourself like comparing, your other pets to Magnum in this situation. And it's just all part of the grief. And I'm all for it. I know sometimes, parts of grief can be unhealthy, but then a lot of it is healthy. A lot of it, the crying, a lot of it, the sadness, and just trying to navigate through that is just all in the person and how you grieve.
My next question for you is, how did you come up with the name Magnum?
So I live in Mississippi, and as I'd said in the beginning, we had two puppies that we took home. So I was like, I'm going to do something that I've never done before, and I'm going to hunt with this dog because it's a lab and they're bird dogs, and I'm here in South Mississippi, like knowing damn well I was not about to hunt with this dog. So I named both of the puppies Magnum, and the brother's name was Bullet. So we had one named after a gun. Can I say that? And then one named after a bullet. So that's just how it went. And later on, I ended up adopting Bullet out. Obviously, I did not keep him because it was a lot with hand raising two dogs. But once he came of age, I adopted his brother out. But yeah, that's where his name came from.
What are some good memories that you can share with us about Magnum?
He was a vacation dog. So we took him on vacations frequently. We would go to these VRBOs that had pool. Hopefully nobody listens to this that had pools, and we'd let them swim, even though, they would say specifically, don't let the pet in the pool. Like, we're pet friendly, but do not let them in the pool. Yeah, no, we would always let them in the pool. Magnum, he was a farm dog. We called him our ranch manager, our farm manager. He was a kennel manager. I was able to bring him to work with me every single day. So we would always joke at our clinic and call him the clinic manager. So we've had a lot of good times with that. And he just, those little memories that you don't really think about during the lifetime of the pet, of him. You think about that. You start replaying those little times and just little silly things that he would do. Like, he was so big, but he could still jump on the counter. So we'd have to watch, like, putting food or leaving food out, because this would be like in his prime day, an 80-pound lab. You'd come home and he's standing on the counter, and you would be like, how the hell did you get up there? Well, I put a camera on him one day, and he just cleared it, jumping up there. So he was funny. He would open doors to let himself out, open the doors to let himself in. He was just, you think about all those little things. So those are always little special memories that I have of him.
He sounds like a roommate.
Yeah, right, huh? He's more humanistic than being a pet. That's right. That's right.
I have a pug, and sometimes, actually many times, I'll find him, and he's still alive, but older dog.
Yeah.
I'll find him sound asleep, snoring, and
Mm.
I'll post it sometimes on social media, and people sometimes respond or they'll comment saying, "Wow, like why is this dog so tired? It seems like he has like a double, like two shifts, you know?"
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Dogs, they really make an impact on a person's life, and we see that it made an impact in your life, and you even wrote a book about
Yeah.
Magnum and
Yeah.
grief. What
Yeah.
was it that lit that inspiration in you to start this project?
Yes. So great question. Shortly after he passed, I realized that I wasn't ready to fully close the door on vet med. I wanted to do something else. You know, had gone through a veterinary technology program. I had paid all this money for student loans, and I was, I'd invested at the time. We were 14 going on 15 years into the field, and I was like, I did not pay all this money and learn all these things to just like let this go to the bedside. So I started racking my brain shortly, after he had passed, and thinking, how can I advocate for animals that, in a way that would fit my schedule, because I was a stay-at-home mom too. So I decided to become an end of life stage pet doula. I've had people ask me, "Did you know that existed?" No, I did not know that existed at all. I Googled it, and that's how I found it. So that's what I did. I wanted to help memorialize him and go through the process of helping families that was experiencing the same thing that I had just experienced. So started doing that, but because I am a person that thrives in chaos, that wasn't enough. So I was like, I'm going to write a book that is about his life. But now I'm brainstorming and trying to structure this, and I'm going back to a sentence that always stuck out in my head and became more relatable now that I was a parent. What am I going to tell my children? Prior to having kids, I would give some cookie cutter answer because I could not relate to those parents. Although I am the eldest of four, and I took care, I helped take care of my siblings a lot. So I kind of, was empathetic in that situation. And, oh man, now you got to explain it to your kids. It's hard. But I started to realize that there just wasn't a lot of resources for families to talk to their children about it. And I wanted to help that. I wanted to make a name for Magnum and let people see his story and how special he was. But I also wanted to continue helping people that had children explain what was going on. I used my sister as the poster child in this conversation for my book all the time. Just personality differences. When the day comes for her family to say goodbye to their pets, it's not that she lacks empathy. It's not that she's not an emotional person, but she kind of freezes up whenever things like this happens. And she would be the parent that says to my nephew, "I'm sorry, Stella and Bailey passed away," or Stella or Bailey passed away. And like, you okay? And then not really knowing what to say past that. So this is where the idea of doing this book, having, like I said, we live on a farm, having farm animals that's familiar to young kids. The colors, things that are all going to be adventure, journey, those words children know. So I wanted it to be familiar to them. Also, the characters are our families, but I left the faces blank because I wanted children to be able to see themselves when they were being read the story, because, right, children's imaginations are wild. So leading up to the end of the book is where the interactive questions are. There is a side for parents or families that are going through anticipatory grief, so they know their pet is getting ready to cross the rainbow bridge soon, and they want to start kind of prepping themselves for it. They want to start talking about it. And then the other side is for families that have already lost their pet, and they'll plug their pet's name into the sentences and structure it and engage in a conversation and just kind of see where it goes from there to open the door for other talks too.
And what is the name of your book?
Magnum's Final Goodbye.
Can you share with us the book if you have it next to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. So I was able to, can you see? There you go. I was able to link up with a local artist, Leanna. She is wonderful. This is her first time illustrating a children's book. And I went to her with this idea and was like, she had already done a piece for us here at the house. And I told her, I want to do this book. I want it to be like a watercolor whimsical and X, Y, and Z in the book. But I want you to leave the faces blank. And she was like, okay, all right, cool. And then I told her why. And I said, I have to trust the process. It's going to work. And light bulbs go off in particular, when I'm doing book readings. One girl sticks out to me. And when I was doing the book reading, the dad in it is really my husband. And she told her mom, look, there's dad. And I knew in my mind, no, that's not your dad. That's my husband. But it looked like her dad because it was the same features: a brown beard, short brown hair. So little things like that. As an author, when you have those light bulb moments go off for children as you're reading the book to them, you're like, yeah, I did it. Somebody gets it. Yes. So I would like to share, if that's okay with you. A lot of parents ask me about the transition from him being alive to how you say goodbye to him. And obviously, it's not a doom and gloom situation because it's a children's book. So when I was structuring the book for that moment, I thought, and this is very silly, but hear me out. I thought about the different Disney movies that have little jokes in there that go over the kid's head, but the adults get it, right? Yeah. Have you seen any movies that are like that? I think yes. We all have. And that's what I wanted to do with this. I wanted the reader, who is the adult or like an older brother or sister, that they understand what we're leading up to, but the child thinks that we're just starting a new journey. And that's how I wanted it to be, that, the dynamics in the book. So I'm going to read that part to you, if that's okay. Going into Magnum being healthy and happy, I recently got sick and I had to go see the doctor. He said I would have to say goodbye to my family soon, which made them really sad. So you and I know that this is where he was diagnosed with cancer, or if something is happening to your pet, this is where, your pet's sick and they will have to leave us pretty soon. So just flipping through, he gets a last day of doing his favorite things. And then now we're kind of getting into Magnum being scared. I was a little scared because I did not know where I was going, but Mom and Dad said I would get to go for a walk on a beautiful rainbow bridge. I would get to see old and new friends once I got there. That sounded really nice. So just reassuring, because with kids, you're like, he'd have to say goodbye. Oh no, where's he going? No, we don't want him to leave. So now the actual part, and this is all true. This is exactly how the day panned out for us. I got a little tired though, so I laid down to take a rest. I knew when I woke up, I would start my new adventure. Mom whispered, "Good boy," and I gave her a kiss. And then the very last page, I woke up from my nap and saw the rainbow bridge that Mom and Dad told me about. I ran across it as fast as I could with excitement. Before reaching the other side, I turned, looked at my family one last time, and let out a big bark as I said my final goodbye. So he lays down for a nap. I know. Yeah, I know. It's a little tearjerker. Look, sometimes it hits me reading it, and sometimes I'm able to talk myself like, keep it together, keep it together. So he takes a nap, he lays down, and I say goodbye to him, and that's what happened. He laid down. We had the final steps of euthanasia, but then, before he went over the Rainbow Bridge, he turns around and says goodbye one last time to his family. And then he's off to his new adventure. So you and I, as the adults, we know what's going on. But to the children, they're like, cool, like I used my son, my 4-year-old son. He gets to go over the Rainbow Bridge, Mom. Like, that sounds like a good deal. Like, he's going to have fun. So, yeah, that's the transition on how we're here and now we're not and where we're going.
Man, I wish I had that book when I was a kid.
Look, it's yes. Yes, and also surprisingly, I've had adults buy this book that do not have children, especially elderly people. And it's been nice to hear the feedback from them. I say children's book author, but I've had all walks of life get this book and just say, thank you. Thank you, because a lot of the questions, especially the questions in the back, I make sure that you do something like, what are you doing to memorialize your pet? Or what are, some things that you're thinking about doing? Because that's important as part of the grief journey too. You can't just like one and done, leave it alone, and then just expect to totally heal overnight. It's a journey for everybody that's been through it. And, doing these little things can help you with it, just like with people.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks so much for sharing about your book and about the journey of Magnum crossing that Rainbow Bridge. Where can people get a copy of this book?
So I am on Etsy, and it's very easy. I did the website is magnumsfinalgoodbye.com, and it links you straight to the Etsy store. And then also I've had people just like reach out to me too, and I'll send it directly to them. So it just depends. I am very big on personalization. So I always give it the option to write a personalized message in the book. I've had some people get this for family friends that have had animals that have passed away. So I'll, write them a note about their particular pet. One thing that was really special to me around Christmas time, I had a family reach out to me and ask me to write the book as if I was the pet that had passed away, to give to their little girl as a Christmas present from their dog that has already crossed over the Rainbow Bridge. So that has been really sweet, doing stuff like that. So I'm magnumsfinalgoodbye.com, and it'll link you right to the store.
Thank you so much for sharing. Now I have a question that I ask all of my guests. Are you ready?
Yeah.
My question for you, Kristen, what is your truth that heals?
My truth that heals. I've never been asked this before. So what you may get today from an answer might be totally different from tomorrow. I like to answer questions like that. Like, you'll never always, I'm not going to say never, but sometimes, just depending on my mood and what I'm going through in life, you may get something totally different. But for me today would be laughter, and just grace, just giving yourself grace and just laughing things off sometimes whenever it's inappropriate to laugh. It's certainly, we've all been in those situations where it's not appropriate to laugh about it, and then you just laugh it off, and it's healing for you, right? I think that for me, that can be something that's just underestimated, the power of laugh, the power of smile. And then also affirmations, right? Affirmations can be healing. Growing up, did you think that it was silly talking to yourself in the mirror? Absolutely. But today I'm like, you a bad girl and you're going to get it done today. Like, you got this. Like, you got this, and everything on your to-do list is going to get done today. So, the power of affirmations can be really nice. And look, sometimes if you don't get it done, that's okay too. Doesn't mean that you're a failure in life. It just means that we're just all human and we're just making it. We're just making it day by day. So I feel like my answer would be a combination of all that for healing, and just the power behind it.
Thank you so much for sharing. Again, the title of your book is?
Magnum's Final Goodbye.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And to the audience, go check out Kristen's Etsy. Get a copy of that book. Share it with a loved one or someone who you know is grieving or is preparing for their loving pet to cross that bridge. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, please feel free to give a like or to hit that subscribe button over on YouTube. If you're listening to this over on the podcast platforms like Apple or Spotify, please feel free to also leave a review. Hopefully it's a nice one. And if you would like, please share this episode as well so that more people can hear The Truth That Heals, which was presented today by Kristen Griffen. And you can help me out also by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/truththath7. All of your contributions help me to keep this podcast going and helps me to pay the bills. So again, thank you to everybody who's tuned in, and thank you very much to Kristen for sharing about the beauty of grieving for a loving pet.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.